Good morning, or depending on when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I've always told us had a voice for radio, so I've made a podcast all about the Pokémon trading card game. And you're listening to PTCG Radio on a very special week indeed. It has been, I forget the exact date I recorded the first podcast, but it's been a year. This is my 53rd show, 52 in the first year, so we're going to have a little bit of a celebration. I hope so anyway. We are going to talk about the US National Championships very briefly, but really today is all going to be about Pokemon in general. I'm going to tell you about the exciting things I'm going to do to move PTCG Radio forward in the next year. And there are some very exciting things coming up. I am going to talk about things like how I got into Pokemon, my highlights so far. I'm going to talk about the challenges of having a Pokemon obsession and a girlfriend, and having a Pokemon obsession and a job. I'm also, because people keep telling me I'm too positive and too nice on the podcast, I am going to tell you my 3 least favourite games I've ever played. We're also going to have some stuff from listeners who have emailed me in recently, so quite frankly, there's a lot to get through. There are going to be, I should say, some interviews coming up later on. A couple I recorded 6 months ago, so you'll have to forgive if some of them are slightly out of context. And a very special interview coming right at the end of the podcast, which is something to look forward to. So starting off this week, as ever, with the news. And in a very sad piece of news, US Nationals this past week weren't recorded. The Top Cut were allowed to record US Nationals last year, and they were allowed to record Worlds last year. And I actually recently went back and rewatched all their World videos from last year, and they're really, really good. They're very well done. What the Top Cut, and I'll give them a quick plug, thetopcut.net, what the Top Cut do incredibly well is, first of all, they have a very good system to record. They get the technology right, and they get little displays laid over the video showing how many prizes are left, etc. But also, there's a group of them, and they do a pretty gosh darn good job of the commentary. Now this year they weren't allowed to do the commentary, and I can only imagine this was because of the whole cheating scandal we've been having. You all remember that a couple of weeks ago I talked about cheating at Canadian Nationals, and that was picked up by some recording, although I should point out this particular recording was not done by the Top Cut. There have, however, been several recordings that have been done by the Top Cut and other people, which have alleged to show cheating. Now in the past, Pokemon have not been... They've gone up to pains almost to remind us that they're not dictated to by the player base, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But recently there was a very interesting conversation on Pokegym, which I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, when it was announced that US Nationals would have a 75-minute time limit in Top Cut. And somebody very high up in the Pokemon company went online and made it very clear that this 75-minute Top Cut was not done in response to people in the community asking for it. It was a decision they made independently. And that's just one example of the kind of stuff they've done. I would imagine, and again, I have no basis for this, all of this is purely my own deduction based on what I can see, but I can only imagine that the Top Cut were stopped recording because Pokemon don't like the fact that these videos are going out on the internet and that they are being criticised. Now, another piece of information, and again, this is very, very vague, but there was a recent meeting of Pokemon people where they were made to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, the non-disclosure agreement would almost certainly be in response to the French guy who leaked the information about, for instance, Battle Rose not having championship points next year and having best of 3 in Swiss and all of that kind of stuff. News which is, as of yet, still unofficial, but as it's still, as far as I'm aware, not been refuted by Pokemon, I think at this stage we can almost take it as read. Now, because of that, Pokemon clearly know that any high-level information, any exciting information, is going to leak on the internet. Therefore, stuff which is important, they're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, as a little aside, I can confirm that this French guy has not been invited to Worlds this year to judge, so clearly Pokemon not happy with him. So, and again, this is just my musing, but I believe that what was discussed was the fact that they don't want people recording at tournaments. And I believe that starting next year, because all we've really got now going into next year is Worlds, and Worlds will be very tightly controlled. But battle roads and cities, etc., they can easily be recorded out if people want to. I believe going forward into next season there is going to be a uniform blanket ban on people recording matches at tournaments, and I believe that this is what the non-disclosure agreement signed was about. Now again, I don't know any of this for a fact. I know that the Top Cut weren't allowed to record at Nationals. I don't know why. I know that there was a non-disclosure agreement signed by the people who attended this high-level Pokemon meeting recently, but obviously, due to the fact that they signed a non-disclosure agreement, I have no idea what they signed it about. But that's my guess. I'm putting this all together. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. The other piece of news this past week was American Nationals. Now, I'm not going to go into American Nationals in great detail for two reasons. First of all, this is my anniversary show, and I don't want to waste it talking about results of tournaments. And secondly, I want to give US Nationals and the results therein the attention it deserves. I can tell you that Ross Cawthorne made top 64 with Garchomp Altaria, which is amazing. There are rumours that a man called Kevin Hart made it all the way to top 16 with Flygon Dusknoir Landorus, which either makes him an amazing man or a dirty liar. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of this. I don't know if it will come out by next week, but I'm hoping it will. In the final, we saw Gothitelle being victorious, which doesn't make me happy. Gothitelle had a big showing in Top Cut, as did Plasma. And what was very interesting was that Plasma, the really successful ones, certainly the one that made the final and the other one that made top 4, both played Life Dew, which I think is very, very interesting. So, that's the news from this week, except there has been new breaking news this week. I told you last week about EX Battle Boost, this Japanese upcoming set, and the fact they had Chandelure EX. And that was teased right before I recorded last week. We have a new one this week, and this one makes me so incredibly happy. It's Excadrill EX, clearly one of the best Pokemon from Black and White. Now we have what I've termed the trio of awesome cuteness. I know it's not a manly name, but Munna, Ducklet, Tepig, they're all amazing. After that, Excadrill is probably the best Pokemon from Black and White. I love that he's getting an EX. Now this is again a basic, despite the fact that Excadrill is he is not effectively, he is a stage 1, but the card is a basic. Now he has 180 HP, weakness to water, a retreat cost of 3, which is very good, because a retreat cost of 3 allows you to be searched with Heavy Ball. Nowadays a retreat cost of 2 is the really bad one. Retreat cost of 1, free retreat with Skyro Bridge. Retreat cost of 3 or more, searchable with Heavy Ball. No one likes retreat cost of 2. Tornadus EX and I believe Cabalion EX and all those, you all suck. Now, he has a second attack which sucks. For a 2 fighting and a double colourless, 120 damage, 10 damage to each of your benched Pokemon. I can't see that seeing a lot of use. When you see 4 energy on a Pokemon, that attack has got to be good. And this isn't as good. 4 energy on a Black Kyurem EX, you're hitting for 200 for goodness sake. His first attack, however, you can do it for a double colourless. That makes this Pokemon incredibly splashable. And it means that you can build a deck around him without even putting fighting energy in. It does 40 damage. Now 40 damage is very, very good. Crucially, it's better than the 30 damage from Landorus. Landorus does 30, times by 2 is 60. It's a free hit knockout on EXs. But Excadrill does 40, times by 2 for the weakness is 80, which means if you hit this attack twice on a Thunderous EX or a Darkrai EX, you're doing 160 damage. If you stick a plus power on one of those hits, or a laser on one of those hits, then you're getting the KO there. Not only that, but with 1 plus power or a laser Verbank, you're donking or one-hitting an Absol. An Absol is going to be a Pokemon that continues to run riot into our next format. So, quite frankly, that first attack is alright. But it's going to need something better than that. Luckily, there is something better than that. Because there is an effect of the attack. And the effect of the attack says, very simply, it's an ether. Almost an ether. You don't reveal the top card of your deck, you discard it. If it's a basic energy, you pop it in your hand. Which is kind of a double-edged sword, because you could end up discarding a dowsing machine, your scramble switch, you could end up discarding a Pokemon Capture, Max Potion, etc. If, however, you ran this with, say, 4 Skylar and 4 Pokedex, You could, and that's assuming there's no rotation which would get Pokédex out of the format, you could potentially run a nice little Ether deck here. 4 Ether, 4 Pokédex with him. You could, in theory, be attaching a lot of energy very, very early on. Now again, it's far from guaranteed. It's a little bit clumsy. It's not great. I think we can say that with some certainty. But there is potential here. Now there's also problems with him. Firstly, weakness to water. But if you run him with Cobalion and a bunch of Cobalion Noble Victories and a bunch of Enhanced Hammers, Kyurem isn't going to be doing you much damage. The other problem is you're then running a big basic deck. Now I told myself my big basic deck days are over. I was going to play real decks where you can run through the deck and have energy acceleration next format. Excadrill's making me want to rethink this. At Nationals, and I've talked about this at length, my deck had a problem with N, and I don't think this is going to be any different, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's potentially a bit of a problem. The other thing is, it's going to have no Blastoise matchup. And that upsets me. So, I don't think I can handle another season losing to Blastoise. However, it's a very good looking card. I don't think it's going to be a game-breaking card. It's going to be on the edges of the format. But interesting nonetheless. There's a couple other cards been teased. The only other two things I really want to tell you about is, first of all, we've got some awesome story cards. So we've got a card of a Charmeleon card where he's accidentally scorching a Swablu's wing with his tail, and then a Swablu card flying off with a scorched wing. We've got a Trubbish card where he's sitting in a tip, a Phione card where he's kind of making friends with a Trubbish, and an Empoleon card where Empoleon is swimming off with the Trubbish and the Phione. Which is kind of cute. There are also a couple of new supporters here. Pokemon Enterprise, flip a coin if heads heal 30 from one of your Pokemon. If tails draw 3 cards. I don't like it. Healing 30 is not good enough for a supporter, because that's what Potion does. And draw 3 cards, well, Cherin does that. There's also Juniper's Dad. Search for a Pokemon, place it at the bottom of your deck. Tell your opponent the name of the card. They have to respond with the Pokemon's height. If correct, your opponent draws 3 cards. If wrong, you draw 3 cards. Now, first of all, if you want to draw 3 cards, use a Cherin. Now, this is potentially slightly useful because you can put, say, a fossil Pokemon at the bottom of your deck, and then use that, have it at the bottom of your deck, and use the fossil to bring it out. However, we've already got those new Pokemon coming out where they can go from the discard to the bottom of your deck. So we don't need the supporter. And then, of course, if people are only playing this in order to put fossil Pokemon at the bottom of their deck, then it's going to be very easy to just learn the half a dozen fossil Pokemon. So, if you use it, your opponent's going to draw 3 cards every time. Which, I don't know. I love the idea. It harkens back to the Blaine cars, Blaine quizzes, but I don't think it's going to work. So, that's the new cards, EX Battle Boost. We've still got this problem, if you will. And the problem with EX Battle Boost is we have absolutely no idea how we're getting these cards. Because, in theory, Japan are getting a little filler set, and then we're getting our X and Y set at the same time they do, coming around about November time. Whether we're going to get these cards in our X and Y set, or whether we're going to get a filler set like we did with Dragon's Vault, I don't know. We're still missing Shining Collection. I imagine Shining Collection will eventually come along like Dragon Vault. But honestly, I don't know how we're getting these cards. Needless to say, as soon as I know, you're going to know. It's what we do around here. So, that is the news for this week. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly run down how I'm going to make PTCG Radio even better going into the next year. Because I've enjoyed doing this podcast. I've gotten a lot of compliments from it over the various formats with WordPress and iTunes and SoundCloud. There's at least 400 to 500 people listening to this on a weekly basis. And I know I've heard from several people who listen in groups. So, this is getting out there. People listen. And first of all, everyone that listens, thank you. I know it's a little bit soppy and a little bit cliched and all that, but this is my 1 year anniversary. If I'm not going to get soppy and cliched now, I'm not going to get a chance to. So, you get it this week. You're welcome. But I haven't really done much with it. It's basically taken the same form it has all year round. So, I'm going to change it. I'm not going to change anything. it's still going to remain as a podcast. My core thing is, on a Wednesday, I sit down and I do my podcast. And everybody knows about this. My friends know that on a Wednesday it's going to happen. My girlfriend knows that on a Wednesday I'm going to be sitting down recording this. And it's look good. But I'm going to start doing some things to supplement that. And the first thing I'm going to do is I've made a YouTube channel. Now, anyone who's been looking at my Twitter in the last 20 hours will have seen that I've been doing this. And you can find it very simply by searching PTCGRadio on YouTube. It's not quite yet the first thing that comes up. You'll get the PTCG Radio that were on Pokemon Dan's channel a little while ago. However, what you will find is the PTCG Radio channel, which you'll find fairly quickly. Now, I ask you all, if you're listening to this, just pop over to YouTube quickly. If you're online, go and do it now while you listen. If you're not online, pause this, go away, find my YouTube channel, and please just click subscribe. I know it's annoying when people ask you to subscribe to their YouTube channels, but please do. What I'm going to use the YouTube channel for is expanding the podcast. If you go on there now, there's a couple videos I've recorded on PTCGO, the official online client. Now, it took me hours to learn how to do this, and I've gained new respect for people like Puka and Jaywitz who also do this. But I'm going to start popping up videos there semi-regularly. There's 2 videos on there at the moment, a very, very short one where I show you what Quad Rayquaza can do, and a slightly longer one where I show you my Nationals deck in action against a Sneasel and Absol deck. Hopefully, within the next day or two, I'm going to stick a hilarious, well, not hilarious, but certainly silly Quad Rayquaza game up there, and I am going to stick another game I played with my Nationals deck up against a Quad Snorlax deck with Eels, which is an interesting little game. And what I'm going to attempt to do with these PTCGO videos is enhance the podcast. I talk about a deck on the podcast, and then I show you what it's like on the YouTube channel. Now, I'm also going to start sticking the podcast up on the YouTube channel, but just to make it very clear, as it stands at the moment, it's going up there as an audio file with a background picture. I don't intend spending time doing a video version of the podcast. It is supposed to be a podcast, and you'll still download it on iTunes and SoundCloud as you've always been able to do. But a lot of people like listening on YouTube, so it's going to go up there from now on. Any time I've got that I could be turning this into a video podcast, I'm going to spend making PTCGO and other videos. Now, another kind of video I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be recording at tournaments. I've gone and got myself a camera, I've gone and got myself a tripod, and I'm learning to use the video editing software. There aren't that many people recording at tournaments at the moment, and certainly, as far as I'm aware, there's no one recording in the UK. So that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to record, I'm going to add some commentary, they're going to go up. Now, it's the wrong time of year, because there aren't really any tournaments until September time. But what I am going to do at League in the next couple of weeks is I'm going to record a couple of test games. I'm going to get some players, several of whom are world players, to go through a couple of games. I'm going to record them, and I'm going to commentate. And maybe I'll get them joining me on the commentary. You never know. So that's what we're going to be doing in terms of that. Now, if you're thinking, but hang on a second, in the news section you just told me people aren't going to be able to record at tournaments. I'm hoping I'm wrong about that, because that would suck. If I am wrong, it doesn't really change anything. I'm still going to record at tournaments, I'm just not going to record tournament games. So if I'm not allowed to record the top 4, I'm going to get a good, for instance, a good Darkrai player, a good Rails player, I'm going to record a best of 3. Simple as that. And I'll actually be able to do live commentary, which I probably wouldn't be able to do if it was a tournament, because I'd have to shut up and keep quiet. So there are going to be tournament games going up there, or at least live games. There are going to be PTCGO games going up there. And as always, I'm open to suggestions. If you've got anything you want me to put up on the channel, if you've got a particular deck you want to see in action, either on PTCGO or live, tweet me at the Wassy. Email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk, or leave a comment on my brand new YouTube channel, and I will try and provide. So please, go on to the YouTube channel, click subscribe. There's a couple of videos up there. I'm hoping to add quite a lot of them in the near future. Another type of video I'm considering doing, and again, please give me some feedback on this, whether you want to see this or not. I have a 10-year-old brother. He's going into the last year in which he could play in juniors. I'm considering making a little kind of multi-part year-long documentary where I teach my brother to play the Pokemon trading card game, because he used to be into the cards, and see if I can make him win juniors at a national championship. See if I can get my little brother off to Worlds. I don't know how successful that's going to be, because there are some good juniors in the UK that have been playing for far longer than he has. But I think that would make a funky little documentary, which I could kind of give you a 5-10 minute video every month or two. If you want me to make that documentary, if you want me to try and teach my little brother to play Pokemon, send me a shout. Now, there's a couple other interesting things which I'm going to be doing in the next year, outside of the YouTube channel. First of all, I'm looking to make some dice mats and t-shirts up, but I'm going to talk more about that in the future. I am trying to get some interviews going. Now, I've always interviewed people at tournaments. That's really good, that's not going to change. And I've always said I ain't doing Skype interviews because the quality is terrible. What I am going to try and do is do some Skype interviews, but where myself and the interviewee both record our audio separately, and then I cut them together. So you're getting a proper quality interview. Now, I've gone in touch with Karl Sukovic, Puka himself from the Top Cut, and he has told me he'd be willing to pilot this with me, so hopefully either next week or the week after, there's going to be an interview with Puka, where we discuss his Nationals run to top 16, and that last chance qualifier thing he took part in at US Nationals. And if that's successful, I'm going to be interviewing more people. So hopefully interviews are going to become more regular, and not just English people at tournaments, but hopefully people from other countries. It should get quite exciting. And the last thing is, I'm going to start judging. Now, just to be clear, I'm not going to pull a Chris Fullup and just quit playing altogether, but I am going to start judging. I am apparently going to be head judging at the Sutton Coldfield Plasma Blast pre-release. If you can, get yourself down there, and don't ask me any awkward questions. It's my first time. But I'm looking to do this more and more. I'm not looking to judge city championships or regionals, because I still want to play. I want to get to Worlds next year. But certainly both Aldershot and Sutton Coldfield have told me I can do a bit of judging next year, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to lie, it's partly because I want to get to the Professor Cup next year, but also I want to actually start judging. I think I'll make me a better player and a calmer person if I can see it from the judge's point of view as well. So, to recap, there's a YouTube channel. Go and subscribe. There's going to be lots of videos going up there, live games and PTCGO. I'm going to start doing Skype interviews with people who aren't English, shock horror. I'm going to start judging, and I'm considering trying to make a little documentary teaching my little brother to play Pokémon. So, there's the news, there's the plans for the next year. I hope you're still with me. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take you through some Pokemon-related things that don't really relate so much to the actual playing. So, a lot of people have asked me how I got into Pokemon. Now, like a lot of people, I was around, I was a kid when Pokemon was huge, and I bought the cards, I bought base set, when they first came out in shops, and I played a bit with my mates, but I was never really into it. And I lapsed for years, and I never thought really any more about it. I still played the DS and Game Boy Advance games and Game Boy games casually as they were released, but I never really got into the cards. And then one time I was driving along halfway down the length of England from Nottingham to Cornwall. It's easy to look up on Google Maps if you don't know what I'm talking about. And about halfway I stopped at a giant Asda, and this was only about 2 or 3 years ago. And they were selling base set boosters for $1.50 a pack. That's, you're talking somewhere around $2.30 if you're in America. So I bought a bunch. And there was the usual disappointment when a couple of the packs came out with rare trainers, which sucked. But actually, I pulled a Blastoise, I think, and a couple others, and then the next time I was passing by that same Asda, they had the exact same amount left, because, let's face it, most people weren't interested. So I bought them all. At that point, I decided, right, this is happening, and I just bought them out of all that they had. And then I started buying a few newer sets, and then I found out there was a Battle Road in Manchester. And I went along to my very first Battle Road in Manchester. I think it's a Battle Road in Manchester. And I took a random water deck. I took a bunch of random water Pokemon, stuck them together with far too few trainers and a bunch of energy. And my thought process on the way to the tournament was, well, let's face it. I've just put some vaguely good-looking Pokemon and energy into a deck. That's what everyone else is going to be doing. I know I'm new to this, but I'm going to have as much chance as anyone else. Unlike most people, I didn't start off by going on 6 prizes, Pokegym, whatever, net decking, learning about the metagame, and then going into it properly. I went into it like an idiot. I just assumed a couple of decent Pokemon, loads of one-offs, very few Pokemon search, that kind of thing. And I ran into this tournament, and in my very first game, I played someone else who was new. And I won. And I thought, this Pokemon thing isn't too hard. I'm going to be good at this. And then I got destroyed for the next 3 games, taking very few prize cards. So I ran around and I spoke to some people, and I jotted down some the names of some of the cards, especially supporters. Volkner's Philosophy and Roseanne's Research come to mind, which I thought might help me to make my deck better. I then went to 2 more tournaments, and I managed to not take a single win from either of those tournaments, including when I went to Exeter. It was a week before Nationals. It was a combined Battle Road and pre-release. And I went to the Battle Roads. I was playing a Snorlax Level X Empoleon Level X deck. Now, if you've never heard of this deck, it's because it's terrible. I mean, it was awesome because Snorlax and Empoleon are 2 of my favourite Pokemon, and at the time I thought I was being wonderfully clever. But in fact, I wasn't being clever. Now, I did knock together a terrible Ninetales Charizard deck, and Charizard was a deck then, but it was a thin Charizard line and some Garchomp Level X's in there as well, for my friend Tom. And I gave him this Charizard deck because it was a bit pants and I wanted a good Empoleon deck. I managed to go 0-3 and lose the tournament altogether. Tom managed to go 2-1, and I believe he took 2nd or 3rd place, which made me feel a little bit silly. And then I went to what I believe was an Unleashed pre-release right afterwards. And it was a lot of fun. At this point I was starting to become hooked, and the next week I went along to Nationals, and this gives me one of my very first Pokemon highlights. Now again, I wasn't reading around the internet at this point. Now I've got my podcast and I read every website on a weekly basis, even the one with the ridiculously vain guy who's taken to just writing articles about how great he is and how amazing he is and how he should always win. You know the one I'm talking about. But back then I didn't really know anything. And when I thought of Pokemon Nationals, I thought, it's going to be a few people playing cards and a load of people just celebrating Pokemon. I figured everyone was going to be in fancy dress. So I spent a week making a costume of the the trainer from Diamond. And I made a waistcoat and I made a hat, and I spent hours, got permanent marker on my housemate's white carpet, ruined my work shirt. But eventually I had what from a distance looked like a decent approximation of the costume. From close it looked horrendous, but from a distance it looked alright. And I went along to discover that I was the only person who turned up in fancy dress. And everyone else was taking it a lot more seriously than me. As for the tournament itself, I played for Alligator Lantern, couldn't beat Jumpluff except for one which stalled horrendously, and I ended up 4-3, which is still better than I did this year at Nationals, when I tested for weeks on end. I ended up putting an Entei Raikou Legend in my deck at the last minute, and 3 of my games I directly attribute losing to playing it badly. Although I would also like to point out that I didn't play a single Lux Jump at that tournament, because I was down around the lower tables. And even if I hadn't got those losses from misplaying Entei Raikou Legend, I would have got them by being smashed by better players. Now, there have been some other highlights of my Pokemon playing career. At my second Nationals, I did a lot better than the first. I took a Donphan deck, Speed Donphan, and I loved Donphan. Now, the testing for this was ropey as anything, because at League I had one friend who was playing a Yanmega Jumpluff deck, which I couldn't be, and basically everyone at my home league was playing a deck which directly countered my Donphan deck. But I loved it, and it was fast and it was consistent, and I never drew dead with it. And it was a risk like this year. It had no Gyarados game whatsoever, but it destroyed SP. So I took it to Nationals, played a bunch of SP, ended up making top 16, which was pretty cool. The very next week I played the winner of Nationals and their Nationals winning deck, which happened to be Vilegar, and I managed to beat them in a best of 3. I do sometimes think that maybe that was my year, but I don't know. I had fun. I got to top 16. The other big playing highlight was last year around the ECC when I made a Regigigas Mewtwo Jirachi deck. And this functioned kind of like CMT, but instead of using Celebi to accelerate energy, I used Jirachi. Now some of you might be thinking, But surely that, and Shaman of course, surely that's a terrible, terrible idea. And it was. It was just a bad version of CMT with Regigigas. And what was brilliant was at the ECC, it was 10 days after Mewtwo EX had been released. And most people there, except for the English players somehow, hadn't got their Mewtwo's. And I won a lot of my games because my opponent just didn't play Mewtwo. And anyone who's been playing for a year or so should recognise the fact that Mewtwo, when it gets going, is very, very hard to beat. And the way you beat Mewtwo is with another Mewtwo. But at this particular tournament, I just kept whacking energy on Mewtwo's and winning. What was kind of cool is the week after that I went to a city championship, and it is the only tournament I have ever been to where I legitimately had the best deck, and the tournament, everything just flowed nicely. I had one loss to Magnezone Eels in Swiss when I kept flipping tails. I think 2 coin flips where I was flipping for the game and I missed them both. But, never mind, these things happen. And it was fun. It was a very good deck. The other success I've had, as I've talked about on the podcast, I grinded into Worlds. I ain't going to go into detail about this, because if you really want to read about this, or hear about this, I should say, just go and listen to the pod from Worlds last year. You can hear all about it. So that's some of my highlights of playing so far. My first Nationals, when I went to Fancy Dress, me Don Fan, my trip to the ECC. The ECC did end on a downer. I actually managed to finish 6-2, and ended up 33rd in a top 32, being one of only a couple of 6-2s that didn't make cut, which was, shall we say, very, very depressing. So, what I did, now I actually did this 6 months ago for the 6-month anniversary, which never actually happened. I went and got a couple of interviews with some of my friends. So what you're going to hear now is an interview with my good friend Nicholas Pearce, and a joint interview with my good friends George Boone and Tamal Cameron, where they're just going to talk about how they got into Pokémon and some of the highlights so far, and what they're actually aiming for with this. Again, it's not really interviews that are predicated on this is what you need to do well. It's just fun little interviews chatting about Pokemon. Now, bearing in mind, I do mention 6 months at one point. I also allude to Nick's recent Cities win. These interviews are 6 months old, but gosh darn it, they hold up as good today as the day they were born. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, I'm here with Nick Pearce. You might remember him from last week, talking about his win at Bournemouth Cities. And with this being the 6th month, we are going to have a quick chat with him. So, Nick, how did you get into playing the Pokemon trading card game?
A local card shop in Shrewsbury called Totally Games. They sell video games, but they sell trading card games as well. It's sort of a friend of mine introduced me to the shop because through relations they knew someone who worked there. And I made friends with one of the other staff members there. And one day I walk in and I see him opening packs of Pokemon. I thought, oh, that's really cool. I'll give that a go. And before I know it, I'm playing fun decks with my friends, and then a few months later I discover about the competitive scene, and I go for my first tournament at Nottingham States, and I sort of took it from there. I actually used to play back during the base set days for fun with my sister as well, but I never really took it to a competitive level. I didn't even know that sort of stuff existed until November last year would be.
Superb. And what makes you play? What is it about the game that keeps you coming to tournaments?
Yeah. It's a mixture of things. I think first of all, the same reason you play, I know. It's the fact that I made so many good friends like yourself and all the other amazing people you get in the community, and it's, as a competitive community goes, it's one of the best out there. I mean, I've played other trading card games as well, and they're fair. Yu-Gi-Oh! It's okay, but it's just not the same. It's not the same sort of level of friendliness and trust between players as Pokemon, and I also like the fact that because of the way the game mechanics are designed, you can draw a lot of cards in a sense, so it means that there's less luck in the game, because chances are you'll have the thing you need to do the right play at the right time. So I like that aspect of it as well. And I've always loved the franchise. I mean, even when I wasn't playing trading card game, I played the video game. I have played them all from Red all the way to Black and White. In fact, Red was the first video game I ever owned. I got Game Boy Color back when I was 4 years old, and it sort of came from there. Superb.
And then, of course, what's the end goal for this? Is there an end limit to when you're going to play? What is it you're actually aiming for? What's going to be the pinnacle, if you will?
I want to get to Worlds, really. I mean, I'm sure most people want to get to Worlds as well. But if that I've broken, when I first before the win at Bournemouth, I felt like there was this anti-Nick barrier which I couldn't get past, and I was worried that I was just doing badly. I was wondering whether it was just me, whether I was having bad luck. But me winning at Bournemouth, it showed to me that I actually had the capability of going out and doing it. And so since then, I realised, right, every time I'm just going to give it my best, and I'm going to not worry if I do, or try not to worry if I do badly, because now I know that there's a possibility of me to do well. And if it comes to that, if I do well enough times, I'll have enough points to qualify for Worlds, and that'll be great.
Superb. Well, good luck to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And in what will probably be a failed experiment, I'm trying to interview both Tamal, Cameron and George Boone here. Now, I've heard a rumour you got into the game together. How did that happen?
Well, we kind of knew each other for a couple of years beforehand, because we both play Super Smash Bros. Melee competitively. And I don't know, I think I saw George and someone else from Leicester post on the forums about getting into Pokémon, and kind of interested me.
It basically started because randomly on some website I saw half a Pokemon card, which at the time was a legend card. Then I was like, this is like some crazy Exodia thing of Pokemon. So I looked it up, then saw these crazy level X's. Then I knew Tamal liked it, so I was like, I want to get into this game. I know you like Pokemon, want to play cards as well? Then it kind of went from there.
What was the first tournament? Did you go together?
No, because I lived in London at the time and George was up in Louth, I think. Yeah. So we were really far apart. But my first tournament was Crawley Battle Roads, I think, and it was pretty good because I beat some pretty high-profile players like Ian Elliott and Ryan Turr, just borrowing a deck from Carl Blake, which was his nationals deck. So it obviously went pretty well.
Very nice. How'd you finish at that tournament?
2-1 with cut.
Oh, back in the glory days. How about yourself, George? What was your first tournament like?
I think it was a Nottingham Battle Roads, in fact. I think it might have been Pokemon Dan's first Battle Road as well, because that was before he even showed his face, so I was like, oh, I recognise that voice off YouTube. It's definitely Dan. And I was playing Kindred Don fan, maybe, just because I was like, oh, they counter each other's types. It's got to be good. And somehow I've got top 4, I think, so that was a nice incentive to keep me playing and get into the game more. I'm
a little bit disappointed. I thought everyone had their first couple tournaments where it was just like you lose all of your games, but it's like a rite of passage.
Nah, we're too good.
Damn it. So what keeps you boys playing? You come to almost as many tournaments as I do a lot of the time. You're around to a lot of different places. What keeps the enthusiasm there?
Basically, I enjoy the community. Everyone's super nice in this game. I rarely have an unpleasant game, and if I do, it's one of the 3 tournaments at worst. Just the people, and I enjoy travelling, seeing the country and travelling abroad as well. I've got to see a lot of places for it.
Indeed, Tamal?
Yeah, same thing really. I mean, we've got to go all the way to like Hawaii, Holland, Prague. Like, it's crazy the kind of places you get to go to playing this game. So yeah.
It's pretty funky. And of course, you two you both went to Worlds last year. You've both seen a fair bit of success. What's the end goal? What's the point at which you're going to be able to sit back and say, yeah, that's all right?
I think me and George in the final of Worlds is pretty much the only thing we're looking for right now.
Probably just the top cut Worlds. Then I feel like I've accomplished a decent amount in this game. Like, I always do alright, I guess, but I've never really done anything substantial. I just do decent stuff.
Superb. Well, thank you very much for both talking to me, and good luck getting to the final of Worlds. I hope you're not put in the same side of the bracket, because that would be awkward.
That would be terrible. Cheers.
And as always, thank you very much to Nick, to George, and to Tamal for allowing me to do those interviews. I love it when people are willing to give their time and energy into the podcast, so thank you very much, gents. It is, as always, much appreciated. Now, people often tell me that I'm too positive when I talk on this podcast. So, I present to you, in order, my 3 worst games I have ever played. Now, I should have those number 3 clips, but I don't have them. So, number 3. Worlds last year, round 1 against Ty Smith. Now, I do want to make it very clear, this is my only interaction with Ty Smith. He could be a lovely man. I don't know him. I have not spent time with him. I can tell you that he completely disillusioned me in round 1 of Worlds last year. So I sit down, I've grinded in the previous day, and I am feeling happy. And I'm not taking, I should have been probably, but I wasn't taking Worlds all that seriously, because as far as I was concerned, I kind of won, quite frankly. I considered myself to have done fantastically, so as far as I was concerned, I could go 07 and be like, grinded into Worlds. So I wasn't taking it all that seriously. And about 30 seconds into the game, my friend Jack walks past and I asked him how he did. He told me I'd he donked Dustin Zimmerman. Sorry Dustin if you're listening. Now, I shouldn't have done that, obviously. If nothing else, it was rude of me, and I will admit that straight off the bat. I shouldn't have been talking to somebody outside while I was playing the game. But you know what? It was Worlds, it was round 1, I was excited. Ty didn't actually ask me to be quiet. He called a judge to give me a warning. I can see where he's coming from. Wasn't, I don't think, the best way to handle it, but he was completely entitled. It just disillusioned me slightly. What was much less fun was when I believe he tried to bait me into doing into not playgrounding, because he used playground, got his things out, and then turned it into sleep and motioned to me to draw my card, not giving me time to search through my deck. And again, I was nervous and all of that, and this was partly my own fault. What was definitely wrong was when we called a judge over. He told the judge I'd already drawn my card, which wasn't true, and I believe he knew that wasn't true. So he tried to convince the judge to not let me take a card at the beginning of my turn. Luckily, we managed to prove that I, in fact, hadn't drawn a card. I didn't get to playground, but that was my own fault. I should have spotted that. What was definitely not cool was when we were both given a warning for sloppy play, and he tried to convince the judge to give me a harsher penalty because I'd already gotten a very minor, unrelated warning. And as I go into judging, I thought I'd share with you 2 very minor, unrelated warnings do not add up to a bigger penalty. Now, as it turned out, this had a very sour ending, as we were given an extension which was about 4 minutes longer than it took to sort this out, and I lost by about 3 minutes. Had time been called when it should have been for us, but never mind ifs, buts and maybes. I was never going to do well at Worlds last year. So, again, I can't blame the man too much, but for all the reasons I've said, it was a very unpleasant game. It was not as unpleasant as number 2, which was Tobias Facing. Now, again, and I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, my apologies. He was a man who I've never met before, and again, I don't know. Basically, we were playing at the ECC. Now, I lost this game because I was flustered. And the reason I was flustered was, as I was shuffling, he was visibly crouching down and tilting his head to try and look at my cards as I was shuffling. He was grabbing my deck and shuffling it halfway through a dual ball search at one point. It was entirely unpleasant. He was clearly trying to give himself an advantage in any way that he could. He was grabbing my deck when he shouldn't have been, halfway through a search, etc. Now, as it was, I misplayed terribly because I was on tilt, but that's not his fault. What was his fault was the rudeness he displayed to me during the game. Now, what is very interesting is I wrote this in a 6 Prizes article at the time, and I received a reply from Tobias. So here, in all its unedited glory, is what Tobias thought of the entire situation. I say unedited. If there's any swearing, obviously I will blank it out, because I can tell you there was swearing in the subject heading. I'm not going to put a German accent on because that would be silly. I've just got informed when you're writing about me in 6 Prizes. Even if you didn't mention my name, I don't think it's okay what you're talking. I was never peeking at your cards, I just watch my opponents when they set up. Don't know why you think this, but if I would put up random suspicions, I could write some on every tournament if I don't like how my opponents shuffle or have their cards below their table. You don't know me and have no reason to believe me, but you can ask other players and judges from my region if I'm an honest player and if I'm just focused to win. Before I read this, I felt sorry for your opponent win after I lost my last round. Just to interrupt right there, he's referring to the fact that had he won his last round, I wouldn't have whiffed cut and resistance. Probably because I was so honest and reminded my opponent that he didn't take a trainer back after junk arming a lightning energy to his discard pile. About the fast cutting and searching your discard pile, I know I'm allowed to do that anyway. Of course it would be more polite to ask. If I cutted too early, I'm sorry, but does that really hurt anyone? The rules say I'm allowed to cut your deck and look at your discard pile, and after all, it saves time we can both for thinking. By the way, if I'd think like you, I could now claim that you want to stall time by slowing down those actions while playing the faster deck. But that would be unsporty, just as your claims were. By the way, you talk about other players not understanding that the game is for fun, but play a deck focused on donk, and even write in your report how you hope for the donk every round. How does that fit? How is a game fun if one player doesn't even get to draw a card? I know the format is like that, and every player has the right to play whatever he feels is best, but playing donk decks while slandering your comments about Tommy Roberts and making wild moral accusations to other players is something I, and the majority of the other players, just can't understand. Greets, Tobias. As I'm dissing him, I thought it was only fair to give his response. 3 things I would say, though. Firstly, you are entitled to cut your opponent's deck after a search. You're not entitled to cut halfway through or just randomly during the game. For instance, if I play a Pokédex and rearrange my top 5 cards, my opponent isn't then entitled to randomly shuffle my deck. That would be weird. Another thing is the fact that he says about me donking. The reason I played Regigigas is because Regigigas is one of my favourite Pokemon, and I was determined to make a deck about Regigigas work, even though, as I said, it just turned out to be a worse version of CMT. But by far the absolute best thing in that email was when he said I was slandering Tommy Roberts, who is, in the game of Pokemon, one of my best friends, someone I see at League once a week, someone who I play with lots. Believe me, if you want to hear me slandering Tommy Roberts, I have said a lot worse than I said in that particular article, I can guarantee you. Unfortunately, this is a clean podcast, so I can't repeat the kind of things I say to Tommy. Tommy, if you are listening to this, and you're supposed to be a friend, so you should be, I will insult you heinously the next time I see you. You'll enjoy it. It will be fun. And my number one worst game that I've ever played was let's call it an undisclosed battle road earlier in the season, where, to cut a long story short, my opponent was narky and rude, so I told the TO, and the TO came over, stood behind me, and joined in for the rest of the game. I am willing to bet most people listening to this have not had to play a game at a tournament while the TO stands behind them taking the mick. Although if you have, please email me. I would love to hear that story. So, there we go. Positivity in your face. Now, the next section of this podcast I'm going to title Pokemon vs. Job. Because I'm getting on a bit. I'm 27 now. I'm old in the world of Pokemon. Not as old as Mike, of course, but I'm old. Sorry, Mike. Everyone said I was being too nice. I'm changing it. So, what this means is, and I do have a full-time job, supposedly a professional job, and I teach for a living, for those of you that don't know. And this is awkward sometimes because, of course, it's a very busy job. It cuts into my testing time. And, I mean, I don't work at weekends, thankfully, which is good, but it means that some evenings I've got reports to write or marking to do, so sometimes it means I'm not playing as often as I could, but I've yet to miss a week of the podcast. It's annoying, but it helps. One thing that is kind of cool, of course, having a full-time job generally means that you do have a bit more money, but I don't know how that's supposed to work. What is an extra interesting element for my job is that I'm a teacher. And it is inevitable that students find out. My name's Ross Gilbert. If you're sitting by a computer, I challenge you to go and Google Ross Gilbert. Just Ross Gilbert, not Ross Gilbert Pokemon or anything like that. Now, firstly, one thing you may find is that one of the very first suggestions when you type Ross Gilbert into Google is Ross Gilbert Pokemon. Even if you just click Ross Gilbert, the second image is my Risk It on a Biscuit t-shirt. The third link is for me on my 6 prizes, and also on the very front page you'll find my Twitter, you'll find my SoundCloud. I.e., if students get bored and Google my name, and I don't know why they would even want to, but they do, they find out about my Pokemon obsession. What is fun is that the fact that they then find out that I'm actually quite proud of it and don't care, and I get bored pretty quickly, to be honest. There was a brilliant quote which I didn't hear, but there were students talking in a computer room last year when I wasn't there, overheard by another teacher saying, "Did you hear? Mr. Gilbert plays Pokemon. And he's not even embarrassed about it." No, kids, I'm not. What's also interesting, and I will hopefully, with the permission of the Top Cut, stick this video up on my YouTube channel. Go and subscribe, wink. The interview I did with the Top Cut after I grinded into Worlds last year is up there, and if you look at the comment section, after a little while it just turns into comments of students going, "Whoa, that dude taught at my school," or "That's my old business teacher." So yeah, Pokemon versus Job. I suppose I'm supposed to say Job wins, doesn't it? It doesn't. And before we get on to some listener questions, my last little comment, my last little section for now, I'm going to entitle Pokemon versus girlfriend. Now, I've seen this kind of discussed on forums, etc. Certainly, I think Eric Nance offered to write an article for it on 6 Prizes. The annoyances, shall we say, of having a girlfriend that's not into Pokemon, because, and I hate to break it to all of you, although I'm hoping you kind of know anyway, it's not the coolest hobby out there. It's the reason the students find out about it and try and give me grief about it. So, but even beyond all of that, you've got the issue of the tournaments are at weekends. And generally, when you're with somebody, they want to see you at the weekends. It's sometimes awkward to balance. This past 6 months, I've had to do a fair bit of grovelling and a fair bit of kind of bartering. Of course I'll come to the barbecue. I might be a little bit late though, but I'll make sure I turn up with a bottle of your favourite wine. Things like that. Because it gets awkward. The only real awkward moment I had was when there were 4 regionals in a row in March, and they were all regionals, all on Saturdays, all in a row, and I can't be missing regionals. So it was a very awkward conversation, the whole, the next 4 Saturdays I'm going to play Pokemon, and they're quite long tournaments, so I'm not going to be able to see you at all that day. Sorry about that. But we can have a Saturday in April. It was a little bit awkward. What I am going to do is on the very, very end of this podcast, I'm going to stick in an interview I did with my girlfriend. It's not the kind of interview I usually do on this podcast, but hopefully it'll be quite interesting. I like the interview, I find it quite funny, but then again, it's me and my girlfriend, so I suppose I would find it funny. Where I ask her about, how she kind of views me as a Pokemon fanatic, my trip to Hawaii to play Pokemon, whether she remembers it from, back in the day, etc. It's an interesting little interview. I encourage you all to listen to it. If you really don't want to listen to it, it'll be on the very end, but I would heartily suggest that you all do. Again, it's the anniversary podcast. It's supposed to be something a little bit different. What I have for you now, though, is an interview with my good friend Aidan, aka Papa Bear. If you're listening, Aidan, I love you, Papa Bear. And in this, again, it's like the interview, it was done 6 months ago when I did the other interviews, but as well as asking him about how he views the game and all that, how he got into it, he is someone who is into Pokemon and has a girlfriend that isn't, so we have a bit of a chat about that. So, take a quick listen to an interview I did with Aidan about 6 months ago. Okay, I'm here with my good friend Aidan Wardle, or as I prefer to call him, Papa Bear. And as I'm asking a lot of people at the moment, what brought you to the Pokemon trading card game? How did it all start?
For me, I was working at Phoenix Games in Leicester when it was still around. At the time, I was playing a bit of Magic, but I was mainly a Yu-Gi-Oh player, which is obviously a bad thing. So I kind of switched because I saw a cool guy named Freddie K. He walked in, I thought he was a pretty cool guy. I saw a lot of people I knew started playing it, so that was pretty much it, really, why I got into it.
Very nice. So why do you play? I mean, you've been playing for a little while now, you keep coming to tournaments on a fairly regular basis. What keeps you coming back?
It's the player base more than anything. The challenge that we get recently with, obviously, our format's not the best at the moment. It's not too bad, but it's not the best. So for me, it's probably the player base more than anything, because it's the regular set of friends that you know are going to be there. It's always a good atmosphere as well.
Indeed. Now, in terms of playing terms, is there an end goal? Is there something that you're really kind of desperate to achieve and working towards? Or is it more just kind of going along and seeing what happens?
I would like one Nationals win. I know it sounds like a lot, but one Nationals win would probably be the pinnacle for me, I think.
No, I'd agree with that. And the question I've got to ask you, you are one of the, I hope I don't sound offensive when I say this, rare breed of Pokemon players who have girlfriends. And you don't bring your girlfriend round to a lot of tournaments, and you hang out with the rest of us single blokes at tournaments. How does she feel about your playing what is essentially a children's card game?
She was alright with it, because I used to play UFS, I forgot to mention UFS a lot as well, when that was really big. And she didn't mind too much because there was a lot of money in it back then. She doesn't mind. I think she doesn't mind because it's only once, for me it's only once in a couple of weeks sort of thing. It's nothing on a massive scale, but the idea of potentially winning trips is always fun and going abroad. So that's probably the big draw for her more than anything.
So she more tolerates it than encourages it, we could say.
Definitely tolerates. She tolerates it like a saint, I believe. She doesn't really encourage it that much, especially when she sees how much I spend on it. Definitely not.
Excellent. Well, thank you for giving us your time, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
And because this podcast is going to come in at over an hour now, and I think an hour is the absolute upper limit, I'm going to leave the listeners' questions a little bit, maybe till next week. My apologies to Sky Shaman especially. I am going to get to it, I promise. But what I have got is a lovely email here from Clinton Matos that I want to share with you because it's wonderful. Clinton says this: "My name is Clinton and I'm a player from South Africa. You already know my friend and fellow listener Brian, who managed to win our nationals. Anyway, I wanted to let you know how I went about convincing my girlfriend to play Pokémon, as I felt it will help some of your listeners. The approach I took was to show her the most recent movie, featuring Victini, as it was just full of cute Pokémon. After that, she fell in love with all the cute ones she saw, but she didn't want to play at League because she didn't know the game well enough. So I purchased a black and white trainer kit. It's got some brilliant Excadrills in it." That was me, sorry, not him. "With this, I could teach her how to play the game and how to make a deck better by taking out unnecessary Pokemon and trainers and just focusing on achieving a main goal. By the time she was confident enough to play at League, she needed a deck. She wanted one which would use only cute Pokemon and no EXs, so it was up to me to build a capable deck with these strict parameters. What I ended up making was a Chicino, Victini and Mulga deck. The goal of the deck is Paralysis Stall with Victini and Emolga while you build up a Cinccino, which becomes a Juggernaut if you keep flipping heads, while using hammers to slow the opponent down. Currently my girlfriend and I attend League every weekend and she's a very good player. So that's my story. I hope part of it can make it onto your show and help others." Thank you, Clinton Matos. And I think it's pretty much time we called it there. It has been different this week, and I hope you have all appreciated it. You know me, I hope you do anyway. I am open to criticism, to feedback. Get in touch, tell me what you liked and didn't like. I've told you about the news that there's going to be no more recording, as far as I'm, guessing. And the news from Excadrill EX. I've told you about my YouTube channel, and please go and subscribe. It takes a second. I've told you about the Skype interviews I'm planning, including the one with Puka, and the fact I'm going to be judging and maybe teaching my little brother to play Pokemon. I hope you're all excited about all that kind of stuff as I am. It's still the same podcast it's always been, but what I'm doing now is I'm trying to expand it with different kind of content on YouTube and kind of better content in the podcast, like interviews. I've told you how I got into Pokemon, my highlights, my 3 worst games, and I've given you some lovely interviews, as well as telling you about trying to juggle Pokemon with a job and a girlfriend. I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight this week, and I hope it's been enjoyable. If you don't like it, all I can do is apologise, but I do hope it's been entertaining, if not as informative as you're maybe used to. Next week, we are going to be back to the way it usually is. There is going to be a big in-depth analysis of US Nationals. I've got a very interesting email from Top 64 competitor Alex Hill, which I'll be sharing with you, and I'm hoping, if I can arrange it in the next week, to bring you an interview with Karl Sukovic, who made top 16 and then managed to get his interview by making top 16 at the last chance for points. Lots to look forward to. As always, thank you very much for listening. Tweet me at the Wassy, email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk, and please don't forget to go and check out my new YouTube channel. I'm going to leave you now to go and hopefully get some more videos up on YouTube. I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of a discussion between myself and my girlfriend. Enjoy. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a very special interview here now. We are sitting with a lady known as Hannah. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, I'm known as Hannah because that's my name.
She is. Now, she is my girlfriend. That is, it's not a big secret at this point. Now, what I do need you to confirm...
My mum knows.
Her mum does know. There was a comment put on SoundCloud recently about my girlfriend being a Pokemon judge, so I do need you to confirm that you are, in fact, not a judge of the Pokemon trading card game.
I'm a Pokemon expert. I made the game.
Bearing in mind that people listening to this will love Pokemon.
I'm not a Pokemon judge, sorry. I lied.
Okay, now we've got that out of the way. So, the whole point of this is I'm trying to get the perspective of people that aren't into Pokemon, and there's a lot of people out there, questions I've got before, and, people talking about what it's like to have a girlfriend who's not at all into Pokemon.
You just sounded like, what's it like to have a girlfriend then?
People want to know. So we can say that you are, shall we say, roughly the same age as me, just a tiny bit younger. So you would have been around at the time when Pokemon was absolutely huge. You would have been a child at the time, like myself. Do you have any memories of Pokemon way back when? Back in the day, if you will.
My brother made me learn all 150.
You know there were 151, right?
Yeah, 151. He taught me on a chart and made me learn them. And I collected Pokemon cards kind of casually. I wasn't as into it as him. And I remember I had this card called like a shiny called Chansey. And then this girl pretended to be my friend so she could get my Chansey. But she was not my friend. It was a hard time.
People are always after your Chansey. So, you first met me kind of a while back, and we were kind of casual acquaintances for a while. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you found out...
Story, is it?
I'm telling the whole story. You found out that I was all kinds of into Pokemon through Facebook and all that.
I did.
When we were just kind of casual acquaintances, what did that make you think about me?
My honest answer? It was interesting because he showed me his podcast and I just thought it was like a normal podcast. Then I realised the entire thing was about Pokemon, and I was like, whoa! And I don't know, it kind of put me aside for a night. I was like, whoa, this dude's really into Pokemon. After that, I was like, oh well. I suppose the thing about Ross is that he's not like embarrassed. He's just like, yeah, whatever, and that makes it less embarrassing. Not that it would be embarrassing. I know you guys love Pokemon. Pokemon's great.
She tolerates it. I mean, one of the biggest problems is, of course, that the events tend to happen on a Saturday and Sunday, and it makes me run around the country quite a lot.
Pokemon steals my Saturdays from Ross.
Well, it steals my Saturdays.
It's been better lately.
How much of a problem is that?
It was annoying when it was like Pokemon season. But you know, like most wags, I'm a Pokemon wag, and you know I have to understand that, you know, for you to be good at Pokemon, you have to put your heart into the game. But it's all right now. It was a bit annoying at the time.
Yeah, Battle Road start again in September. Now, I have tried to introduce you to the game a little bit. We've played a little bit with theme decks. How did you enjoy it? When we played those couple, casual games using little theme decks, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. It was fun.
Any inkling to get into it slightly more?
I don't know. I guess I'd have to be a bit less rubbish because you had to tell me what to do like every move. So I'd have to have you there looking after me. So I'd have to learn a bit more. But maybe
that's how we get into it.
Fun.
Now, probably the most extreme thing I've done in my pursuit of Pokemon perfection is I've travelled halfway around the world to Hawaii to play Pokemon. How do you view me, given that on the one hand, I went to Hawaii, and on the other hand, I played Pokemon?
When you said you're going to Hawaii, because we were friends back then, you were boasting about going to Hawaii, because I was going to France. I was like, stuff you. But then I found out it was Pokemon, and I was like, whoa. But you said that, only a couple of days were Pokemon, and the rest was holiday in Hawaii, so that made it a bit less sad.
Does indeed. And the last question, I'll let you go. Do you have a favourite Pokemon?
I like Charizard. My brother was obsessed with him, and he's kind of kick-ass and he breathes fire. I had a dream about a dragon the other night. But I don't have a big... Pikachu's not my favourite, because that's too cliche. I'm not into cliches. Like in Sesame Street, I like the Groucho monster more than Elmo, because he's just everyone's favourite, so I guess Charizard.
And that's the first mention of Sesame Street we've had on this podcast. Although it is upsetting to me that we're currently...
How many you've had?
We are sitting in a flat with a Mamoswine magnet on the fridge, Mamoswine figures all over the place.
Yeah, but I didn't even know who he was till you introduced me to him. He seems very nice.
And he's weak to Charizard, so thank you for ruining the interview right at the end. Well, thank you for giving everyone a different perspective on the whole Pokemon thing.
Actually. They probably think it was deliberate, but it wasn't.
I'll let you go now.
Okay. Bye, Pokemon people!